Hi there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the conscious community to bring awareness to those things that help us to live our best life. So the holistic approaches. So tap into the knowledge and wisdom of our guests to extract what you need to heal, transform, and live as your true soulful self. Today with us, we have the beautiful Ali Mayer from Hypnobirthing with Ali. So welcome, and can you introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do?
Sure. Hi, thank you for having me. So I am a hypnobirth practitioner. And what that means for people who don't know is basically I run childbirth education classes where the onus is on the outcome for mum and baby. Sort of focusing on positive outcomes, empowering outcomes. There's no focus on a type of birth. I think hypnobirthing, a lot of people think, unless I'm willing to do it, at my home with a doula and a shaman and someone beating a drum, then it's not a hypnobirth. But hypnobirthing is for everyone. It's about education. It's about empowerment. It's about women and their families making choices for themselves, for their family, and what they want to do, and knowing, the background behind why these choices are being offered to them, why they might want it, why they might not want it. That's basically it.
So I must admit, I am one of those people that in the past thought that hypnobirthing was that, like the people that chose to have their babies at home with the drum and or in the pools, those sort of things, wholly and solely. But can you dive a bit deeper into what that might look like for, say, a mum that isn't fully down that path wanting to do that, but is interested in this hypnobirthing?
For sure. So I and anyone else that's kind of trained by Hypnobirth Australia, which is where I got my certification. So that's another thing for people to keep in mind, that not all hypnobirth practitioners were created equal. There are different training facilities and different philosophies, and the philosophy of Hypnobirthing Australia is about birth for everyone, about how you want it to be. So say, for example, there is a mum and she has just always wanted a cesarean. She has absolutely no interest in having a physiological birth. In fact, that, terrifies her for whatever reason. She doesn't want that. All she wants is a cesarean. The Hypnobirthing Australia program kind of goes into, well, how do you want your cesarean to look? Do you want the drape up? Do you want the drape down? Do you want to see your baby emerging? Do you want your baby to try and emerge on their own? Do you want them to be assisted? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be kind of propped up so you can see baby and so you're ready to receive baby? Do you not want to see it? Does looking, the thought of that, does that make you feel uncomfortable? Do you not mind that? It's just about choices. It's about, do you want baby to be put immediately on your chest for that skin to skin? Is that important to you? Or would you rather they be taken away and a pediatrician look at them immediately? It's about knowing those choices and knowing, the benefits and the risks and the alternatives. And it's just about tailoring birth to you. Like, I kind of look at it as birth is like, what do you like to drink? If you go to a cafe, what are you going to order? Everyone orders something different. I drink a rooibos chai with oat milk, whereas others will have, a long black, or they'll have an iced latte. So, there's 100 million different variations of a hot drink. One is no better than the other, but it's about what feels good to you, what tastes good to you. If I was to sit and drink a coffee, I don't like the taste, I don't like the smell, my heart would be racing, my thoughts would be racing. It doesn't sit well for me. But for you, that might be the most perfect way for you to start the day. You love the smell of coffee. It makes you feel good. You love the energy that it gives you. And vice versa. If you pick up a chai, you might go, ugh, I hate cardamom. I hate cinnamon. I don't want to be drinking this. And that for me is, how I look at birth. We're all individual. And the beauty of being individuals is that our birth can be individual too.
I love how you've just described that, because another angle that I see it as is I might like to try the rooibos tea, but I don't know what that tastes like. So I might like to ask someone, what
Mhm,
is that like for you? What did that taste like for you? Or,
mhm,
was it warm? Was it cold? Like,
mhm,
so having that person or that practitioner or that community around the choices
mhm.
to delve into that more, because there is so many choices around birth. And do I want them to have the vitamin K when they come out? Do I want this? Do I like?
Exactly.
And I'm like,
Mhm.
too many things.
It's a lot. It's a lot for, especially first time mums, because there's even, phrases and words and concepts that you've never even heard of. So you're
Yeah.
trying to navigate this new terminology at the same time as trying to work out, what do I want? What is the best thing for my baby? And I feel like, you know, being a mum starts the minute that you conceive. Immediately you're thinking about this little soul and what is the best thing for them. And that's really hard to do if you're finding it hard to get reliable information, because I don't think people realize that often the information that's being told to you, there is a bias behind it. You see a doctor, or you see, whoever you see, there is often bias behind it, and people don't realize that birth is business, particularly in, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but, in private hospitals, it is the obstetrician's business. They care about what happens to you with how it happens to them as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, the great thing about the classes that I teach, it basically says, here is the information, here is the facts, here is the studies. Do what you like with that, and find people that will support you. Like there's the 4 key elements of hypnobirthing, and the first one is knowledge, with the concept that, knowledge is power. If you're in a vulnerable position, which every woman is in birth, whether it's a positive experience or not a positive experience, every
Yeah.
woman is deep in their vulnerability. And if you're being thrown questions and you don't even understand it, you're more likely to just say, yes, okay,
That was me.
even if that's not what you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really, really common, um, a really, really common thought process is, if I'd had time to think about it, or if I'd known a little bit more, I probably would have made a different decision.
Yeah.
So the other elements of it after knowledge is, we teach a whole bunch of tools for remaining calm, but also for decision making. So when it comes to crunch time, and things go a little bit off course, which sometimes they do in birth, this course isn't a guarantee that you're going to have an unmedicated, unassisted physiological birth, and it's going to be amazing. There's going to be rainbows, and there's going to be doves singing at your window. Like, it's not a guarantee, but what it does give you is tools for that. If it does start deviating, if there are no doves, you can actually take a minute and go, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to relax. And I'm going to ask the questions that I know I have the time to ask, so that I can hear the answers and I can make an informed decision for myself and for my baby.
Yeah.
It's also about teaching birthing mothers to really look at who they have supporting them. So, not so much just going, oh, the baby's father will be my birth partner. They might not be the right birth partner for you. They might walk into the hospital and faint. They might not be the
I've heard
person.
stories of that.
They might not be the person that you need there with you. And on the same line, they might be the most beautiful, perfect fit person for you. And the course offers them all these wonderful skills and tools and information so that they can support you 100%. And the other side of it is, who are you going to have at your birth? Who's your caregiver?
Yeah.
Do you want to be midwife led? Do you want to have a doula there? Do you want to be in a hospital? Do you want an obstetrician? And what are you looking for in an obstetrician? How do you find the right people to support the birth that you want? Which I think is, that's a whole other thing, isn't it? It's who you have around you in those moments of vulnerability. You need someone who's going to pick you up and who knows your wants, so that you're not having to make those decisions on your own.
Yeah.
And then the final phase of the hypnobirthing courses, is about preparation. So preparing your mind, preparing your body in both, like the physical sense of, what we should be eating, how we should be moving, but just like really digging deep into that brain of yours and going, what are my fears here?
Yeah.
What is going to hold me back on the day that I birth my baby? And how can I get on top of that fear?
Mm.
Like fear in the body presents itself, whether it's fear about not being able to get a car park, or whether it's fear about, those really deep-seated emotional fears of, is my baby going to be okay?
Yeah.
They present themselves the same in your body. So if you have 100 little fears that you think, oh, it doesn't really matter, it all does. The body doesn't know how to process it differently.
No, I've heard people, friends talk to me about, oh, I went for my doctor's checkup and they've said this, this, and this about the baby, or I've got this, all these labels that they've given them throughout their pregnancy. I'm like, wow, they're just giving them, here's some more fear, here's some more fear,
Absolutely.
and then they get to the
Absolutely.
final stage and they've been told, I might not be able to have a natural birth. It's because of X, Y, Z. It's like, whoa, you're carrying, like, I can feel in your energy, you're carrying so much
Yeah,
heaviness. Like you're going to
absolutely.
be your own self-doubt there as well. Like, yeah.
Mhm. And then you kind of tax on all the well-meaning friends and relatives,
Yes.
I don't know, strangers at the grocery store that feel the need to tell you the most horrific birth story that they've ever heard.
Mm.
And I don't really do this as a culture because, like, I can't wrap my head around why you would say to someone who is about to do something, hey, I heard this really horrific way that happened. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but I think, it's a cultural thing. We really place birth on this pedestal of like, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Whereas in like so many cultures around the world, birth is something that like young girls, like they're exposed to and they're excited for, and they actually cannot wait. And if you listen to the way that they describe birth, it is the most miraculous thing that could happen to them. It is wonderful. It is amazing. And they really look forward to it and they revel in it afterwards.
Because they have just brought this life into the world after they've
Yeah.
grown the bones and the veins and the
Mhm.
brain and the organs, like, and then you're gifting that to the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, in those cultures where they are exposed from a young age, they see birth and they go, okay, that's what it looks like. That's what a birthing mum looks like. She's okay. Whereas in our culture, I did a little poll on my Instagram the other day of who has ever seen a birth that wasn't theirs. And it was like 0%,
Yeah.
aside from doulas and midwives and obstetricians, anyone that works kind of in that birth world, non-birth workers, it was 0% of women had seen an actual birth before they went in for their own birth. So of course there's going to be fear if you've never, seen or experienced something.
Yeah, 100%. I must admit, the first time I ever saw one was when I did my, scheduled course that I had to go and do before I had my baby, like 4 weeks, and it freaked me the hell out. I'm like, no. But I was just talking to my friend Michelle the other day, and her daughters are young, like they, I think they're 9 and 6, and they were asking her questions, and she said, well, let's find a video. And she found this beautiful natural birth video and was showing them. And yes, initially they were a little bit horrified, but they saw and they experienced it, and then they asked questions. So it's something that they at such a young age have seen and know about. Whereas I know that there are quite a few people that they wouldn't even show their child that, because babies come from a stalk and it drops them down into the backyard, and then you go and collect it. Like, the stories are all convoluted and messed up.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's so interesting. The other day I was actually watching a couple of the videos that are part of our course that have been like generously kind of donated by previous hypnobirthing class participants. And my son came over. So my son's 3.5. And he said, what are you doing, Mum? And I said, oh, I'm just watching a couple of videos for work. And he said, can I watch? And I said, yeah, of course. And I kind of like tucked him under my arm, and my mum was there, and she looked over at me mortified. And she was like, you don't want him to see that. And I kind of paused it and I looked up at her and I said, why wouldn't I want him to see that? And she said, well, you don't want him to see a woman, screaming in pain. And I was like, Mum, these are hypnobirthing mums. They're not screaming in pain. And she was like, oh, okay. And I was like, I want him to see birth. I want him to see the power of a woman birthing. I want him to have a healthy respect for women and their bodies and what they're capable of. And that one day, if he decides to marry a woman and they decide to have a baby, I want him to look at her and just say, you are incredible. And to be the most, amazing, supportive birth partner and not run away from it and not be fearful of it. And, maybe even encourage some of his friends to be like, birth is epic.
Oh, that is so beautiful. You've made me emotional. That is so beautiful. I've got like full body gooses. You're so passionate about what you do. And this is a really strong message. So glad we're recording this podcast because it's a really, really important conversation to be having these days. Like, don't shelter the children. Yeah. So how did you get to doing what you are now? Like, what brought you into this world? I can see you're super passionate about it.
So I'm actually a nurse. I'm a clinical nurse is my my kind of background, I guess. And I guess my mother-in-law kind of lovingly says I straddle the line between kind of normal culture and woo-woo. Like she says, I kind of walk this line where, I'm a nurse, so that's like a very like hospital science, policy is policy. But then I have this other side of me that's just like curious and soulful and spiritual. And like, I just want to learn more and do more and kind of like share that with people that I can. So when I first found out I was pregnant with my son, I knew that I just wanted to have, the natural, no pain relief, no assistance birth. Like I knew that's what I wanted. And at that point, I didn't know a single woman that spoke positively about her birth, except for my sister-in-law, Sophia. She, her son at the time would have been maybe six or seven, but she'd had a really beautiful birth. And so in talking to her, she said, look, you got to go and do this hypnobirthing course. I loved it. And so sure enough, we went along, did the course, and I was just like, yes, this is me. I love this. I need to know everything about this and more. So I just became like entangled in everything I could read, every book about, positive birth and physiological birth. And I was just like in a vortex. I was like, I couldn't bring myself out of it. And with the tools from hypnobirthing, I was just practicing the scripts constantly, like love the affirmations. I was just like deep in it. And then we had our son and it was beautiful. We had one of those water births, the ones that but it was gorgeous. It was amazing. I loved it. Our son was so calm and happy once we'd had him. And my husband was just so, like, it was beautiful to see him supporting me in that moment and him feeling confident in us and in me. And at one point I heard the midwife say, we had a student in the room, and I overheard her say to the student, in births like this, we just sit back. The mum and the dad know what they're doing.
Oh, I love that.
And it was like that sentence was so empowering because I was like, here is a midwife. She sees this all the time. Like she knows what she's doing. And for her to look at us and say, they know what they're doing, just let them go. I was like, we have got this, honey. We know. So we had our son and that was gorgeous and lovely. And our postpartum was, much the same way. It was gorgeous and it was lovely and it was calm and it was, I don't know, it was just a really nice experience. And then a couple of years after that, I was pregnant with my daughter. So we did the refresher course and her birth was a not willing to wait kind of birth. So from start to finish, she was 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, yes.
So we made it to the hospital with about 6 minutes to go.
Oh, wow.
But even in the timeline, like I think for a lot of people they go, whoa, that must have been, so intense. How are you feeling? Was that really scary? But I was just in such a good place. I was loving it. Like at home, I was just, I labored by myself primarily for the, hour before we left, because my husband was with our son. But it was just nice because I was like, you can do this.
This is
You know what
happening
you're
and I know what I'm
doing.
doing.
Yeah. And once again, in the lead up, I just kind of entangled myself in reading and listening and, immerse myself in everything I could hypnobirthy. So it all was just kind of second nature by the time that labor came. In the car on the way to the hospital. So I'm Brisbane local. So we hopped in the car at 8:15 on a Friday morning, and we had to travel from Barden to the Mater. So we had to go over Coronation Drive
in traffic.
So we're in the car and I'm like, I can feel my baby crowning, but I cannot tell my husband because I need him to be able to focus on everything. But it was like this weird mash of feelings between, if he pulls over now, we're on Park Road, I could probably hide behind that building and birth there. With other thoughts of, I hope we're not going into the hospital too soon. I don't want to go too soon.
Yeah.
And then another one was, when we get there, I'll probably just ask for a cesarean.
Oh goodness, that was the extremes.
So for anyone that's kind of in the know, like I was very obviously in transition, I was in that moment of like, baby is about to be here, and you get that flood of adrenaline. And so your thoughts are just kind of all over the place. But, it was still so nice. And, our daughter arrived, we kind of took 2 steps into the birth suite, and our midwife was, trying her hardest to fill the pool as quick as she could because she knew we wanted another water birth. But I just looked up at her at one point and I was like, I have her head.
Oh gosh.
So that was our daughter, and completely different birth, but it was still amazing. It was still so nice. We were home by lunchtime with that one, so that was that was nice. And then every person that I spoke to who was kind of pregnant, I would just listen to how they felt about their birth, and there was so much fear. There was so much fear, there was so much anxiety, and then
that transfers to the womb, like with all the work I'm doing lately. It's all part of it. It's all
doing a baby. And then it all follows on to your postpartum experience too. If you have these births that are leaving women feeling traumatized and leaving women feeling disempowered, and all of a sudden they're in this amazing, transformative, super influential moment of their lives, like matrescence, the process of becoming a mom. If they're trying to do all of that, which is a lot, it's a lot, in every way, physiologically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, there's so much happening. If you're doing all of that and you're starting it all with trauma, like I don't know how you hope to have a positive postpartum. I don't know how you expect both you and your baby to feel settled and secured, and for breastfeeding to be, a comfortable, natural thing. And, because quite often baby comes and mum doesn't get to debrief. Mum doesn't get to sit there and, talk about it, or feel sorry for herself, or whatever she wants to do in that moment. She can't. She's mum now.
You've got to give.
So it all kind of gets swept under the rug, and then you see this awful moment of mental health declining, and mum and baby aren't bonding, and like I can't help but wonder if, and you don't know because there's no way to compare, but I can't help but wonder if we rewound that, mum went into birth feeling positive, empowered, and she got to make the choices, how that postpartum experience could have been for mum and baby. So that just made me go, you know what, I have to do something here. I have to help women know that this isn't how birth has to be. We can change the narrative. We can change it for ourselves. We can change it for our children. We can change it for our children's children. The more women that birth empowered, and the more women that birth gently and calm, and again, it doesn't have to be a beautiful, natural birth. It can be a gorgeous cesarean. It can be a birth with an epidural. It can be whatever you want, as long as mum felt like I made those choices and I made them for me and baby.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just feel like for generations to come, this is going to have a positive impact.
Yeah.
If you're hearing my mum had a great birth, my grandma had a great birth, my auntie had a great birth, you're going to go into it feeling
I'm going to have a great birth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's sort of, I was reading just what you wrote with your last guest, Sarah, the awakened mama, and how she was talking about how, gaining possibility for yourself is one thing, but giving possibility to someone else, like, that is just how amazing.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately how I got here. It was like, I really believe that, all women can do this. Birth doesn't always go to plan, but all women can walk away feeling like I was in control. I got to make the choices. Birth was something that I did, not something that happened to me.
Yes.
So that's it. So I did my training, and yeah, that's kind of where I'm putting my everything at the moment, is just trying to help as many women and as many families start their journey as a family in the most positive way.
Yeah, that beautiful inclusive decision making too. I love how you've put everything, during our chat today. It just makes so much sense, and it feels really good too. Like, if I was to go back and, have another, which I'm not, the shop's shut, I would definitely, want to learn more about this and make my own choices. I was one of those people that just went along with it and was, hustled into the, cattle stalls and pushed along the thing. And even in birth, decisions were sort of made for me, or given pressure to do particular things, and just gone, okay, you're the professionals, but then afterwards going, I didn't need to do that. Like, yeah. So what advice would you have for mamas, dads, people wanting to find out more about hypnobirthing out there?
I would just tell, and not even just the hypnobirthing mums and dads and families, I would tell every pregnant woman to just, like, get curious, ask questions.
Get curious. I love that.
That's it. Like, just, like I said, I'm a nurse. And so I've seen, the hospital side of things, and I've always been really unsettled by the blind faith that people have in health professionals. Like, it's great that there's, respect there, but like, I'll never forget the day that I work in a unit where we do procedures. And on that particular day, we were doing all colonoscopies. And so I was kind of just, in the role of it, kind of doing the admission with this patient, and I gave her gown and her bag and everything. And I said, okay, so we just need, clothes off, everything off, underwear off. Here's your bag. I'll wait outside. Here's your gown. And I'll take you through to where we go next. And then I was just standing there kind of running through her paperwork and running through everything in my mind. And I looked down and realized she was having an upper endoscopy, not a colonoscopy. So all we did on this list was colonoscopies, but for whatever reason, she'd been allowed through to have a upper endoscopy. And so I quickly knocked on the door and I said, I'm so sorry. I did realize, but I was just in the routine of, you having a colonoscopy. I was like, you don't need to get changed, leave your clothes on, leave your underwear on. And she came out and she was like, oh, I did think that was funny, that I needed to get, nude for this. And I was like, why didn't you say anything?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, because you're a nurse. And I just said to her, I was like, always question.
Yeah.
Always. Even if you think it's a silly question, it's not. Ask the questions, because, healthcare providers are human. They make mistakes.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, hospital policies and procedures and guidelines aren't the law. And in a lot of cases, those policies are there because they've just been there for a long time.
Yeah. Isn't that
there isn't recent evidence behind this. It's just something that someone brought in, a squillion years ago, and no one's really bothered to revisit it. And so it's just the way it's done. But, ask the questions, push back.
And
Like,
if
what is
people
it that
are
you
getting curious and a lot of people
Mm,
are asking, that policy may get updated and changed and reviewed and, all the things. So,
absolutely.
yeah, I love that advice. Thank you. So good.
Yeah. 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 I think that's the best thing you can do. Like in the hypnobirthing course, we kind of talk about asking questions, asking how is this beneficial for
Mm.
me? And then follow it up with what are the risks? What are the risks for me? What are the risks for my babies? What are the alternatives?
Yeah,
What if
what are
we
the
wait a
options?
little
Yeah.
bit longer? What else can be done?
Mm.
Because unless it's an emergency, and you will know if it's a true emergency because no one will be asking questions, it'll just be happening.
Yeah.
But in almost all situations, you have the time to ask.
Mm.
Even just ask, can we have 5 minutes to think about it?
Yeah.
Without people looking at you, without a doctor staring at you, because I know for a lot of people that's an intimidating
Oh,
thing.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they had one of those natal um monitors in my baby's head, like up inside
Oh,
me.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the nurses had tried to get it out and they couldn't. And then the obstetrician came along and he got it out straight away. And he looked right at me and he said, "This isn't working. You need to have a cesarean. Are
Yeah.
you okay with that?" And I'm like, I don't even know, like, what is happening right
Mhm.
now. There's been all
Mhm.
these people doing all these things, like,
Mhm.
and then my husband was terrified because he thought I was gonna die, but I probably, like,
Absolutely.
in hindsight, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
wasn't, so
You probably did have the time to have that conversation.
yeah, and that's
But
that, chaos of
Mhm.
the arguments even between the obstetrician and the nurses
Mhm.
and all
Yeah.
the things going on, and you just feeling like the uncomfortable one in the
Mhm.
corner. It's
Mhm.
like, isn't this about me and the baby?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a highly emotionally charged thing, isn't it?
Mm.
All anyone wants is the safe delivery of the baby and for the mum to be safe
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
But the language that's used, and I think like the energy, it's such a chaotic one. And I think there's so much fear promoted intentionally or unintentionally. And the other thing is, obstetricians are busy. They
Yeah,
have other people to see.
yeah.
So, their need to hurry things along, you might be viewing that as, oh, he needs to hurry it along because he's really worried about me.
Mm.
But in actual fact, he might be trying to hurry you along because he's got another 6 people he needs to see and he had
Yep.
dinner reservations at 8. And, that's not always the case. There
No,
are
I know, but
institutions out there, but
mm,
you have to like ask questions, like even ask the question, you seem really stressed. Why are you stressed?
yeah, wow, isn't that an empowered way to ask?
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's what I mean. Like, look around. If something is making you wonder what's going on here, ask the question,
Mhm.
find out.
And having the guts to do that, like to speak your
Mhm.
truth and say,
Mhm.
"Hi, I feel like I'm just a outsider in the corner over here. Can someone please talk to me about what's happening?"
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it should be about you.
Mm,
It should be about the mum. The mum should be at the center of it, and everyone else is kind of on the pyramid down. But somehow we've kind of like flipped birth upside down, and suddenly, it seems like mum's at the bottom,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
heartbreaking. So hopefully, through more people getting curious and more
Mm,
people doing, a bit of self-education and coming along to classes like the positive class that I teach, people learn to kind of like find their voice,
yeah, find their voice. I
and
love
realize
that.
that these people you're talking to are just people.
Mm,
They're not superior to you. They are just people. They are there to help you. And
mm.
so they should be able to answer all of your questions.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so excited to see when we release this podcast. Like, if you've got a story that you'd like to share in the comments of the
Mhm.
YouTube, or even when we post it into socials, please share, because it
Mm.
would be amazing to hear what came up for you as Ali and I have been chatting along. And thank you so much, Ali, for your time today. And is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we part?
Not at all, but thank you so much for having
You're so
me. And
welcome.
I look forward to speaking to anyone that's got any questions, any comments, anything that they need to know. If even if you're just thinking, I want to find this resource and I don't know how to find it, get in touch. I'm happy to help.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.